What's going on, everyone? My name is Brandon Haneline. Now today we're going to be talking about the maintenance on the Jeep Wrangler 4xe. We're going to be going all the way from 0 to 150,000 miles or up to 15 years. We're going to be talking about the capacities of all the different fluids. We're going to be talking about what fluid types to use and when to change those fluids. Some of these are a lot different because it is a hybrid vehicle, and that's why I want to bring this information to you. I want to make sure that everyone is aware of what needs to happen on your new Jeep Wrangler. Now let's go ahead and get started with the oil change. Now the first thing that you need to know is that Jeep Wave actually covers the first 3 oil changes and tire rotations. Now this is great for Jeep owners, and I actually have this, and I've already used my first oil change, and it was a great experience. Come to the dealership, they take care of it. You don't owe anything for the first 3 oil changes or the first 3 years. Okay, so you have 3 years to use the 3 oil changes. If you go past that 3 years, you lose them. Okay, if you use the 3, then you're done. Now when it comes time to do your oil changes, you need to know that it does take 5 quarts. 5 quarts of engine oil, and it does take 530 full synthetic. As you can see here, this is the full synthetic 530. This is what they recommend, the Pennzoil. Now also with the oil filter, okay, it doesn't show you anywhere in the owner's manual about the oil filter, but as you can see here, we're going to be using this part number right here, which is going to be 4892339AB. All right, now this could supersede to a new number sometime in the future. Now this is the oil filter that the Jeep Wrangler 4xe with the 2.0 liter takes. Now let's talk about the cooling system and the antifreeze. As you can see here, there are 3 different sections on the cooling system: the engine, the battery, and the power electronics. There are 3 different cooling systems that this electric Jeep Wrangler has. All right, so the engine takes 9 quarts. All right, the battery pack area takes 4.3 quarts, and the power electronics takes 4.5 quarts. Now what we're using here is this 10-year 150,000 mile antifreeze. All right, it is OAT, which is organic additive technology. All right, so make sure that you get this specific kind here. It is the part number on this is 68163849AB. Now I will put all of this down in the description below so you can have access to these part numbers. All right, moving on to the actual transmission itself. All right, this is a AP75PH transmission. It is made by ZF and is a special transmission for the electric Jeep Wrangler. Now starting off with the facts here, it does take almost 9 quarts of fluid. Keep in mind this fluid is very expensive. I priced some out at the dealership and it was $52 a quart. So I'm sure you can probably find some at a somewhere else for cheaper, but I would honestly do not recommend doing anything to the transmission. All right, if there's something going on with your transmission, make sure that you see your authorized local dealership. Just make sure that they're using the right fluid. Moving on to the transfer case here, it does take 3.72 pints, and it uses Modifier, just regular ATF like transmission fluid. So that's a pretty easy one there. If you do need to service that one, there is a plug on the bottom that you drain, and then a plug at the top where you would fill it up. As you can see here, you would fill it right up to the bottom edge of that fill plug. All right, let's talk a little bit about the differentials here. On the front differential, it is the same for the Rubicon and for the Sahara. We're going to be using this right here, the 7585. Okay, we're going to be using a 7585 gear axle fluid here. This part number for this is 68378949AA. All right, this is what they recommend for the front, and the same thing for the rear. Now the front does take a little bit over 2 pints, and the rear, depending on which model you have, it takes 3.06 pints or 2.87 pints. Now do keep in mind, if you have the limited slip, you will need this friction modifier here. This is not in this. Keep that in mind. You have to get this separate. So this part number here is going to be 4318060AD. You can see right there. And remember, I will have all these down in the description area below. Now I will have to say, in the service manual, it does not say anything about changing the brake fluid, but as being in the car industry for almost 25 years now, I will have to say every other make and model recommends, even the National Tire Transportation of Safety recommends that you replace the brake fluid every 2 years or 24,000 miles. Now, if you're going to do that, make sure that you use the .3. Now, you can upgrade to the .4, which is synthetic. So just make sure that you at least use the .3. This is the Modifier brand of the .3. Now, power steering. The power steering reservoir, if for any reason you need to fill up the power steering, it does take a special fluid. It has an electronic power steering pump. Now keep that in mind. Here's the part number for that. You can see right down here. All right, this is 68088485AB. Now, I don't think that there are any service intervals on the power steering, but we'll get to that in just a minute. Now, I want to go back to the oil change here because I talked to you about what oil to use and what filter to use, but we did not talk about the maintenance intervals. Now, the very first thing that it says in your owner's manual is right here. Under no circumstances should oil change intervals exceed 10,000 miles, 12 months, or 350 hours, engine hours, that is. Now, the first thing that concerns me a little bit, it says 350 engine hours. Now, we have no way of checking the engine hours, but I do think on police vehicles or any type of fleet vehicles, maybe in the future they're going to come out with some type of fleet 4xe, that you will be able to check the engine hours. But for right now, we have to go by do not exceed 10,000 miles or do not exceed 12 months, okay? I don't care what your little indicator says on your dash, all right? Don't go past it. This is crazy. 10,000 miles is a really long time, guys. And I do know that all of those 10,000 miles are not driven with the engine running. But let's just say it's 75% of the time. That's still 7,500 miles on the engine. A lot of different driving styles that people have, so you really can't put a specific number on it because you don't know. Some people may be driving in electric a lot more than some people are driving just in just gas. Me, I did my oil change at 7,500 miles, and I'm going to guess that my engine probably had about 5,000 miles on it. Guys, I just want you to be aware, please do not go more than 10,000 miles, even if your indicator says you still have more life to go. 12 months or 10,000 miles, okay? I would prefer to see you at 7,500 miles just to make sure you don't do any damage to the engine or anything like that, just to protect yourself. You do have those 3 oil changes that come with the Jeep, so just make sure you use them. Now let's go ahead and talk about the maintenance schedule. Now if you look, this starts at 20,000 miles. And you may wonder, why in the heck does it start at 20? Why doesn't it start at 10? Well, this does not include any of the oil changes. Remember, we said every 10,000 miles or 1 year on the oil change. So this is everything else besides the oil change. So as you can see here, at every 20,000 miles, we're pretty much checking everything, okay? But the first thing that we have here is replace engine air filter every 30,000 miles, cabin air filter every 20,000 miles, and if you would like for me to, I'll do a video on how to replace that cabin air filter. So your cabin air filter is every 20,000 miles, and it looks like everything else is in spec. Replace the spark plugs on the 2-liter engine right here, okay, every 60,000 miles. All right, keep that in mind. 60,000 miles, we got to replace the spark plugs. Now that could get expensive. I don't know how much the price of that is, but just keep that in mind. All right, so the next thing you're going to see here is flush and replace the engine, power electronics, and the battery coolant. Remember, we talked about that antifreeze. That has to be changed out. But when? It doesn't have to be changed out until 100,000 miles. Check this out. 10 years or 100,000 miles on the actual antifreeze. Now, this is very interesting. Change the manual transmission fluid. All the 4xEs come with automatic. We can't get manual in a 4xe. Not really sure why they have that in the 4xe supplement. This is something that concerns me a little bit here. Let's talk about the transfer case and the front and rear axle fluid, okay? So it shows every 40,000 for the rear differential and front differential, but every 60,000 for the transfer case. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I think 40,000 miles is a little too long for the actual rear differential. I know that's what the owner's manual states, but what I have seen in the past is 40,000 miles is just too long to go on that fluid. I do know that it is synthetic fluid, okay? I've seen a lot of axles with 20 to 30,000 miles and the fluid just is black. It just looks like diesel oil. So I want to be honest with you, my personal opinion, I want to change my differential fluids every 20,000 miles. I'm probably going to change the transfer case fluid also every 20,000 miles. That may be a little excessive, but you want to take care of your Jeep, okay? Because maintenance is cheaper than repair. We did miss one thing here, the PCV valve, okay, at 100,000 miles. So at 100,000 miles, you're going to need to replace the antifreeze in all three things, and also you need to replace that PCV valve. Now, one thing we haven't talked about yet is the oil change reminder. Now, that oil change reminder in your instrument cluster, okay, is a calculation based on a lot of different things, okay? It's based upon the last time it's reset, the engine hours, how many fill-ups of gas that you've got, how long the engines ran, how much electricity ran. There's just the time, there's just a lot of different inputs that come in to calculate that number, okay? I was at 7,500 miles when I went to get my first oil change, and I still had 50, I think it was 52% left on the actual instrument cluster. If I would have waited till it got to 0% and told me I needed to change my oil, it probably would have been around 15,000 miles. Guys, I know this little indicator is nice to have, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of it, and I think it doesn't really give you a great reading. It's just an algorithm and a calculation based on a lot of different inputs. So really need to stick with a mileage based oil change interval. And I do think this here is a little excessive, 10,000 miles. You know, there's just too many variables to know what different people are driving. So my personal opinion, I understand it is synthetic oil. Remember, we got synthetic oil here, but if you go 7,500 miles, what's going to happen is you're going to get to that 7,500 miles, and life is busy, guys. Life is busy, and so you're going to say, hey, I need to get my oil changed. The next thing you know, it's 2 weeks later, it's 3 weeks later. Now you got 9,000 miles on the Jeep, and you're getting the oil changed, okay? That's why they say don't ever go over that 10,000 miles, okay? So just remember, at 7,500 miles, go ahead and get the oil changed because life is busy. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Now, I hope you're enjoying that new Jeep Wrangler, and I hope you're smarter now than you were when you started this video. Have a great night.